Take one. The day of resurrection. We continue to be in that Easter celebration, in that Easter season. And in Luke's Gospel, the 24th chapter, you get this accounting of the reports. The reports by the women who saw the empty tomb. The reports by the two men on the road to Emmaus. The report by Peter that they all saw Jesus. And oh, like the men on the road to Emmaus, oh, how our hearts burned. And so you would think here, as they are talking about these reports and talking about the sightings of Jesus, that they would be just anticipating seeing Jesus themselves. And suddenly he appears, and the presence of this divine appearance doesn't cause them to go, woohoo! Instead, the presence of the divine being produces fear. These disciples are shocked by the sudden appearance of Jesus in their midst. As the text says, they're startled and terrified. You might want to say they're a little bit out of touch with reality. Because in their own minds they have what is their anticipated reality. But then the reality of Jesus, as they see before them, makes them think it can't be true. And so Jesus speaks to them. He shows them his hands and his feet and gives them proof that it is him. And as we hear in the text, this proof produces amazement among the disciples, but we also hear that there is continued disbelief. It pushes their limits. It pushes their limits of what is reasonable and what is credible. It pushes us out a little bit farther. But what lingers in their midst is that possibility of disappointment, that they can't really believe what they see. What about us? What about us as we encounter Jesus, as we encounter Jesus in his word, as we encounter Jesus in the gathering of his people? I know as a pastor, and I know with my people, there are times when Jesus pushes us to the limits. He pushes us to the limits of what is reasonable and credible. He doesn't do it in great leaps and bounds, but he does it just a little bit at a time. It pushes us a little further. And in our doubts and in our minds, our questions, there's that possibility of disappointment that still remains intact. And so we call into question what we are being asked to do. And doubts blur our believing. And so we ask those questions. Can we accept the incredible thing that God wants to do in our midst? Or do we just fall back and assume that it's impossible? Do we question that this is just some random event, some strange occurrence? It's a one-time thing, we'll never have to do it again. Do we listen to the rumor buzz? The people who begin to doubt and the ones who sort of poo-poo what's going on and want to drag us down? In our minds, do we think that this is some source of embarrassment for us, especially if it doesn't quite work out the way we think it should? And are we scared that it might result in a shameful end? Too often in these occasions where God wants to push us and push our limits, we allow our own perception to become what matters. In fact, it becomes the basis, in fact, it becomes the bias of what matters to us. And so you and I become out of touch with what God wants us to do. We become out of touch with who God wants us to be. We become out of touch. We scratch our head and can't believe that it's real. Now that's the first take.